Rainfall, 2011, we have 12 inches. That's decent. The average of the city's 15 inches. A little bit of a dip in 2011. 2012, we got 8 inches. Oh no, that's kind of scary. 2013, we get 2 inches of rain.
It's ridiculous.
Halfway through 2014, we've had less than 1 inch. Perfect stuff. There was a lot of hope that we'd have like an El Nino this year. They're kind of predicting it early, but it's starting to look like it's not going to happen. So we're going to continue then this direction. 2008, reservoir levels were well below the average, and California state was going through its like driest period. Like I said, in 88 years. Up to that point, it was a lot earlier. Governor Schwarzenegger declares it as a drought, our first drought declaration in 17 years. At the moment, some of our major reservoirs are less than half full. 10 of the 12 state reservoirs are below 50% of their total capacity, some as low as 20%. The largest federal reserve in California, Lake Shasta, is at 36% right now. If you see pictures of them, there's just like a watermark and then brown streaks and then a puddle of water.
Is that where they get the soda?
Yeah, that's where they get the soda. Lake Shasta.
The soda.
Come to the soda. Yeah, they're saying that this is like the worst drought we've had in California history. Knocking on the park. Not only is it getting hotter, the air is polluted. Santa winds are there. It's dry. Wildfire season's coming up. Between 2006 and 2007, which again had 2 of the most deadly heat waves in the summer, we were short nearly a foot of rain between July 2006 and June 2007. Just 3.2 inches, which is closer to Death Valley's numbers. So just to school you on a lesson about how we get our water, there's 3 main sources of water. There's the Sierra Nevada snowpack, which melts the ice and it comes down through Central Valley, and that's what gives water to all the produce and stuff. California is like a major provider of the entire country's fruit, produce, and like livestock. And because it's so dry, we've been losing a lot of money, almost like $1 billion in revenue because of this dry period. We borrow from the Colorado River, and then there's just the groundwater basin water that we use. That's the 3 sources of water that we have.
What about bottled water?
Water.
Can't we just use that?
It's coming from Switzerland, though.
Let's drain them.
Yeah. A decade ago, in 2004, California agreed to stop using more than its share of the Colorado River water. That's like a major import for us for water. Like I was saying, we're losing more than like $1 billion in revenue because of our dry period, which is affecting a lot of people. And they're going to pour another $500 million in for groundwork pumping. They want to pump water, but the problem with that is the deeper you go, the more chance that there's salt and chemicals in the water. Yes. And it's also a short-term answer. Like, we can pump water.
The Earth's deep.
Yeah, the Earth's deep, right?
The core is filled with water, right?
And this is more of a problem. I mean, it's a problem for all of us. It's going to be a problem for the entire country. It's more of a problem for, like, the San Joaquin Valley and Central Valley because they're getting the effects immediately. LA, like I was saying before, we're very eco-friendly, but it's put this idea that, like, oh, nothing can touch us. So we might be sort of like ignoring the problem and wasting all our water, because they're saying that we could be in the middle of what's called a mega drought. They're saying it could last for more than a decade. A mega drought lasts for more than 2 decades, and they say we might be at the beginning of that because we're just getting less and less water and more heat and everything's dry. The state's drought has reduced river water from Central Valley farms by roughly like a third of their normal level. The amount of groundwater pumping is doubling in some areas, such as like I said, the Tulare Basin, San Joaquin Valley. This has kept the agricultural losses from like spiraling out of control, but like I said, not a permanent solution for this like pumping groundwater. The snow from the Sierras only produced 29% of its normal amount of water, like the lowest reading since 1988. Your birthday. That was the year you're born. What's the problem with you? That's 32% of its annual average. Some of the solutions are having Governor Brown wants to transfer water to locations that need it the most. My house, whatever, my water bottles.
This room right now.
Maybe turn a sprinkler on. He's also asking residents to lessen water consumption before he begins rationing it, which I believe has happened in Northern California. I think they begin rationing water in like San Francisco, I think. There's also a $500 fine for over water use. It's starting to get serious now. So like I said, the effects of the drought, farming's going to start to collapse. California is responsible for 15% of the country's produce, over 7% of the livestock. If they could survive the heat, we've already talked about dead animals. So much California revenue is at stake because of this that we're not going to be able to put food on plates. Food prices are going to rise up because of this.
Well, we can't eat dirt anymore?
We've had droughts before. I mean, pretty bad droughts. 1817 to 1913 was one. That's almost 100 years. With its worst year between 1863 and 1864. It was a really dry spell in 1924. I'm
going to tell you something that happened a year before that started.
Oh, boy.
They were glad to have that.
They were, strangely, I was reading, this all comes from a chart called Droughts and Floods, and a lot of years are correlating. Like we would have a drought, and then like we'd have too much water.
Oh,
Why is that? Let's get to it.
we will.
Okay. There was a really dry spell in 1924.
Be careful what you wish for is the answer.
I'm going to fill this room with water. There was a really dry spell in 1924 that made the state reconsider and re-envision how irrigation would fill up the whole city. The Dust Bowl droughts between 1928 and 1935 built this desire for irrigation and water storage on like a bigger scale. So we saw the construction of the federal Central Valley project system of canals and pumps and aqueducts that like pretty much keep us wet. You know what I mean?
This conversation is keeping me wet.
All oiled down here. The droughts of 47 to 50, and they had another one 59 to 60. They helped to justify investment in state water project, which irrigates Central Valley and keeps water moving in Los Angeles. So every drought at the end of it had us reconsidering how we're going to take in water, how we're going to move water around the city. So,
and then nothing really changing.
Yeah, and then somehow we're here again, right?
The equivalent of a rain dance.
One of the biggest droughts we dealt with was between 1976 to 1977. At the end of the damp season of 1976, damp, not wet, rainfall levels were at like 65% of the norm. Reservoirs were drying up just like they are now. There was barely any snowfall from the Sierras. 1977 rolls around and is marked as the driest year on record before we got here. 47 of California's 58 counties declared a local drought emergency, making them eligible for relief money on both the state and the federal level. The drought is credited with sparking water conservation movements across the state that helped encourage urban residents to refrain from typical household routines like watering lawn, washing cars, flushing toilets, showering for days on end, washing clothes. I was watching the Dogtown and Z-Boys documentary. That
was last month.
Oh boy. They talk about skating pools happen in this era because all the pools were empty.
Yeah,
and that's when they first started doing it. And it was during this drought.
We could have been the backyard scuba diving capital of the world instead. What a world.
What a world. What a world. What we have going for us is all the precipitation levels fluctuate. Like you read about droughts that lasted for more than 100 years. They just turn around. There's going to be a flood any day now. California water systems are some of the best in the world. LA, like I said, is very eco-friendly, which is why we run, fountains and raging waters night and day.